I want to leave a quick note about this video that you're about to watch. Now, unfortunately, while I was filming it, in the last few minutes of the video, the SD card died, and so the video is lost, but the audio does still exist. And so the last few minutes of this video will be still images and voiceover from me, but I wanted to get the video out to you regardless, so I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to Bedhead Books. Today we're going to be talking about Spotify Teardown. Now, this book was actually the result of a research project that was commissioned a few years ago by the Swedish Research Council. As such, this book has got 5 contributing authors, and I'll just reel them off for you now. They are Maria Eriksson, Rasmus Fleischer, Anna Johansson, Pelle Snickers, great name by the way, and Patrick Vonderu. So in case any of you don't use Spotify or you're not very familiar with the platform's origins, it was set up around 2005 by businessmen Daniel Ek and Martin Lorentzen.
The paradigm shift was the ownership model was changing into the access model. So instead of buying CDs, vinyl, downloads, you wanted to hire or rent going into the access model. And today you can see the access model coming in different areas like Netflix, like you can also say Uber, you're accessing the car, Airbnb is some kind of access model. So I think you can see that in many areas.
And it began as a free app, and they later introduced their premium service where you can pay for an ad-free listening experience as opposed to the free service where the music and the playlists are there to create ad space for various investors. In the early days, the platform purely consisted of songs from Ek and Lorentzen's own libraries, and so there was some limitation on the amount of music that was on there. There was obviously some copyright issues that were eventually resolved, but in the early days there was a limit to the amount of music you could listen to on there, which of course is definitely not the case now. So, through a series of research interventions, the authors take a look at the way Spotify uses and processes data. And so, a key way that they do this is that they create a number of bots and fake accounts of different age groups, different locations and gender assignments to see how Spotify presents itself to, say, for example, a 20-year-old female versus how it would present itself to a 65-year-old male. So the music recommendations they would receive, the targeted ads that they would receive. Perhaps the most interesting intervention took place when the researchers set up a series of record labels, and one such project was named Frukost. I hope I'm saying that right, but it is basically Swedish for breakfast. And what the album consisted of is a series of 1 to 2 minute sound collages of someone making breakfast. So someone making toast, coffee, and this was uploaded to Spotify through the usual platforms such as CD Baby, DistroKid. A couple of the platforms rejected their files because they could identify it as sound rather than music, whereas Spotify did not make that distinction once the files were uploaded to their library. The idea and the concept behind that, of course, was to see how many plays it took before this music began appearing on the recommended page of the bots and the fake accounts that they were running. So Spotify has long been criticised by artists for its royalty rate, which stands at around 0.006 cents per stream. Now this is to be distributed between the artist, the label, the publisher, and so by the time this trickles down to the artist, there is a very, very small fraction actually reaching the person who has written and performed the song. And if you take that amount and you convert it to the currency in your country, so for example, if I was to take it and invert it into British pounds, 0.006 cents would come out as 0.0046 pence. And if I was to get, for example, 100,000 streams of a song on Spotify, that would bring me £46, which seems like a really low amount of money in comparison to the amount of streams received. Now, I don't want to make this part of the video sound like I'm defending the major labels and the multi-millionaires who have got loads of money coming in anyway.
Look, there's Lars now sitting by his pool.
What's the matter with him?
This month he was hoping to have a gold-plated Shark Tank bar installed right next to the pool, but thanks to people downloading his music for free, he must now wait a few months before he can afford it.
This does definitely affect the little guy more than anyone else, the small independent labels, and beyond that, the bedroom producers and the independent artists, the guys and girls who are out there recording everything themselves, doing the writing, the production, the distributing, playing all the instruments. Now, they stand to get 100% of that royalty, but when 100% of the royalty is 0.06 cents per stream, you can kind of understand that it's not a massive consolation. The big disadvantage, of course, is that the major labels, they've got a huge catalogue, they've got all these major artists that they can hand over to Spotify, and that's ad space for Spotify that can reach so many different people because of the appeal of the artists and the genres that these major conglomerate labels have, whereas the smaller labels, they don't have that. They don't have as much to throw into the pot. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that the royalty rate should be dramatically increased, because there's the whole question of where's that money coming from. But perhaps Spotify could look at reducing the royalty rate for the major labels. And this would mean things are leveled out more between what the indie labels can accomplish on the platform and what the major labels can accomplish. On a personal note, when Spotify really started gaining momentum here in the UK around 2009, 2010, I saw it very much as just another peer-to-peer sharing website. And I can't claim to have too much against them because I'd used them before in the past, but around the time I was starting to go into university, I had these professional aspirations of my own to be a musician. I thought, you know, I'd be able to get famous with my music, as I think most people do when they're around the age I was in 2010. I've realised over the years that that isn't going to happen, and I think I've caught on, like many musicians, to the fact that Spotify isn't going to go away. You know, it's here to stay. It's the main way that people are consuming music, and if people listen to your music, that is what matters. And if Spotify is the way to go, then Spotify is the way to go. Quick edit for you here. Spotify have been in the news these past couple of weeks because they have said that if artists want to make a living out of music, they have to release an album on average every 6 months. Now, there's been lots of videos made on this particular topic. I'll link you down below to the video that A Dose of Buckley made, because it's the one that probably closely resonates with me. But in brief, my opinion of it is that it's rather like Spotify is deflecting the criticisms over its low royalty rate. And it's rather like if you went to your employer and said, for the skills that I contribute to this company and the amount of money that I make you, you do not pay me enough. And that employer turning around and saying, well, if you want to make money, you've got to work hours and hours of overtime and do things that aren't even in your contract. And once again, it's to the detriment of independent artists, because they cannot afford the studio time and the resources, and they don't have as big a team as the major labels. But that's my thought in brief. Back to the video. Furthermore, as a consumer, you have to appreciate Spotify. You know, you have to listen to new music all the time. You've got to keep in touch with the music that you love. And Spotify is, without a doubt, the best way of doing it. You'd be very hard pushed to type something into Spotify and get no search results at all. The only platform that rivals it in that sense would probably be YouTube. And that's only because the sheer amount of amateurs on YouTube who take vinyl or CD rips of old obscure albums, or even just film themselves listening to the record on the turntable. Another thing that's come up recently about the royalty rate as well is the state of the music industry following the outbreak of COVID-19. How that has obviously meant the closure or temporary closure of several venues and cancellation of tours, meaning artists' main revenue stream has been completely severed and they have to rely on Spotify. The royalty rate really does come into question there when you're having to use that money to live, to pay your rent. Once again, I don't want to sound like I'm sticking up for the multimillionaires, but the professional musicians or the session players, for example, who play on all the recordings that you hear on Spotify, they've got to live, they've got to pay their rent. As I understand it, this has led to some kind of review. As I record this video, I'm not too sure what the progress has been on that. If I find anything out more, I might pin a little comment below in the comment section. So over the past couple of years, I've heard music critics comment on something that has been labelled playlistification. And this is where music is produced, it's distributed, and the aim is to get on as many trending playlists as possible, both on the radio stations and on Spotify. The music has to sound like it belongs in that playlist. It can't sound different, it can't sound out of place, and that has influenced the way that music is mixed and the way that the bass is mixed, and it does make things rather stale and stagnant. And for example, a lot of people listen to Spotify on their phones. They use their handheld devices with little tinny speakers, and so if you've got something that requires listeners use headphones or a nice good high-end speaker system, as much as you might want to produce music for that sort of setting, and we'd all like to hear our music through massive booming speakers, it doesn't seem to be the way that most people listen to music. And if people can't listen to your music on their smartphones, then they won't listen to it. Another point I will make about remastering as well is that a lot of recordings from 50, 60 years ago have been remastered very much to fit within Spotify playlists. There was apparently a quote going around a couple of years ago from Giles Martin, who remastered the Beatles' White Album, where he had said that he wanted these songs to now fit onto a playlist where they could be before or after an Ed Sheeran song. And while I am not the world's biggest detractor of Ed Sheeran, and I think it's great that we can get new generations constantly listening to these classic artists, by mixing them in such a way and producing them in such a way that they sound like everything that we're getting now in this day and age, are we not subtracting the character that existed in those original recordings in the first place? Are we sucking that out for the sake of getting more plays and more listens? So yeah, in conclusion, I found Spotify and Teardown to be a very pleasant book. It's slightly more academic than the books I usually review on this channel, but at heart, I probably still am a music student. In terms of an in-depth book looking at Spotify, I'm going to have to give Spotify Teardown a 6 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and share. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe so that you can save your place for later. And remember, don't judge this book by its cover.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart has fallen too, I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room, and now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.